I believe we're live. First of all, apologizing on our behalf for like just making 10 minutes late. Atoosa was in a different country, and all these softwares, they're always hard to get it and to download it. Behind the scene was exciting, quite exciting. So, Atoosa, thank you so much for joining. I just want to say I always start human mode conversation with just the why behind these chats, and these like exchanges. I work with so many leaders that they feel quite overwhelmed with everything going on in the world of work, with AI, with technology. They feel quite irrelevant. Are we going to be replaced? So I just want them to have an opportunity to listen to different, scholars, tech founders, leaders, thinkers like yourself, and just like gain a bit of confidence first of all, and maybe some action plans to do. So I
Yeah.
was just thinking that if there was one person to talk about AI, it should be you. I'm gonna just like share a bit about you. First of all, we know each other from Montreal from like many years ago. You're not living here anymore, but you are a professor at which university in Pittsburgh? Please tell us this.
Carnegie Mellon University, or CMU.
Exactly. CMU, which is an extremely like well-known university. You're also a council member at like World Economic Forum, and also you're just a visiting professor at Google DeepMind. So obviously, let's just start with the first question. What's keeping you up at night when you think about AI?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Nogol, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and share some thoughts with you. Maybe I just want to start with giving a 30-second kind of like background information. Hopefully, it's going to be useful for people who kind of hear me. I was an engineer and very much interested in developing softwares for very mundane tasks such as scheduling of airline crew members. That's what I did actually in Montreal as a project, and then gradually I became very interested in the impacts of this technology on society, human experience, human life, because I truly believe that good technology, when it's designed good, can really make life and human condition better, can resolve a lot of the problems, but when it is bad, then of course it can disrupt a lot of human experiences, human work, labor, etc., in negative way. So I am very interested in thinking about the impacts of currently generative artificial intelligence systems that are the brain of technologies like ChatGPT, etc., that I hope we are all familiar with, and thinking about the social impacts of these systems. Now, understanding social impacts of these systems is really, really hard because, as I said, by definition, these systems are general purpose. It means that they can be used for many, many different tasks. So I think about these systems as disruptive technologies. And so disruptive is not necessarily a negative term. It means that these systems are going to transform some ways or aspects of organizational structures, human practices, human labor, etc. And it's not something super new about AI systems. Before AI systems, we've had various different types of general purpose technologies. One of them is electricity, the other one is steam engine, many other technologies, printing press, etc., that kind of like make humans to reconfigure and rethink how they have to be involved in some task. So maybe the first thing I can say is that we need to contextualize artificial intelligence as a general purpose technology as a continuation of general purpose technologies that we've had. And we shouldn't become very afraid that, oh my God, this technology is now going to like destroy everything. Definitely technology is going to be transformative. How much transformative it's going to be, an open question, an empirical question people are studying. But I truly believe that being very dreadful and fearful of this technology is wrong, and also is not going to help us to kind of like reconfigure ourselves in relation to the new technologies advances that we are seeing.
I love it. And it's very interesting because I think that already other guests discussed these comparison or like talked about this comparison between AI and like electricity and others, but I don't think that we ever discuss it as this like general purpose technology, meaning that it can do different things, it can do good, it can do bad. However, one thing that we can also say about those older technologies is that they all challenged like workforce. They all challenged how we work. They brought like so much opportunities, and definitely like also like created some new ways of working and living and thinking. So when we think about workplace, I just want to see, and I'm going to tell you what where my concerns come from. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
work a lot around cultures, around work cultures, around how people work together, creating psychological safety so that people can take risks, they can feel included, they can collaborate, communicate, create together. And I have to admit that we are far, far from anything ideal in terms of our collaboration as human beings. So the
Mm-hmm.
challenge is that as we're adding this layer of technology into these systems, like how could we just how can we get ready? Like how can we build these infrastructures so that we can just work with this, with like technology, but also work well together? Like
Yeah.
how is that change is going to happen?
This is such an excellent question. And again, I want to reemphasize that being fearful and dreadful of a technology is definitely not going to help. Maybe I can start from sharing a specific experience example with you. As Nogol said, I'm a university professor, and so one thing that I love about university is to teach students. Now, systems like ChatGPT obviously have really challenged the way us as professors connect to our students, connect to the evaluation of students, and assess students, right? So 2 years ago, a lot of the professors at the universities started discussing what are going to be the impacts of ChatGPT on students, right? Are students going to learn? Are they going to come back to university? Very open question. Now, this is very interesting because even the professors different across different universities didn't have an answer to this question. So what we ended up doing is that we ended up doing experimenting. And I think one thing that is really important when new transformative technologies are impacting society is just to think that no one has the perfect answer. We just need to experiment. We just need to remain patient, grounded. We need to share find out a solution. No one has the answer to this question. So, okay, I thought I teach a lot of courses on ethics and philosophy of technology. Pre-ChatGPT, I would allow my students to write essays at home, so take-home essays, were the main mode of evaluation. Then I figured that's not going to help. Now I really need to reconfigure how I am going to evaluate students. And so then I thought I'm going to evaluate students in class because students, one thing that these systems currently can't do is that they don't allow students to have a perfect experience of exchanges in class, connecting to other people, sharing perspective, public speaking abilities, etc. And these are things that I never thought about before ChatGPT. But ChatGPT made me to rethink, as you said very correctly, what would be an optimal way of doing education. Previous approaches for them, but they were not like very perfect. So, so now I've started finding ways to empower students by using this particular technology. And what I found amazing is that a lot of the students really want to learn. So I don't think that we will have less registration in universities just because of technology. But it would all depend on whether the professors find a way to empower human experiences, student experiences with technology, and still finding about new ways of learning going forward, etc.
So this is actually a great segue to my next question, because like what you shared with the students is really like around like about your experiment is really their ability to like collaborate with each other, to talk to each other, to interact, to actually share an idea. Like it's really more of a human skills and those social skills. In the workplace, they used to be called like soft skills, and soft because they were not important. Actually, like World Economic Forum itself like shared something around like the 2030 skill sets, and definitely like AI fluency and literacy could be like will be one of the main like like skill sets that we all need to learn how to work with technology. But besides that, it's really more around like collaboration and that human skills, like your influence, how you like analyze the work that AI generates, like how do you use your creative thinking, like how do you see this shift happening within the society, especially within like organizations that they already worked with these cultures where soft skills were always like pushed to the side.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think it's a great question. So I think maybe one principle that we should never forget is that it is very true that organizations at some point get used to a very specific type of structure and power relations, but nothing is permanent in the world, including structures of the institutions and organizations. Therefore, yeah, I think many need to at least be ready for the idea that some of the structures, some of the relations, some of the jobs, etc., would be changed, right? So, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. We all change. We all, grow older and like become, go from teenagers to adulthood, etc. So change is a part of life. We shouldn't be afraid of that. But I think one thing maybe that I want to bring attention to, which is really great, is that these technologies can actually be really used again when they are developed and designed properly to empower people. One very interesting example of this that some of my colleagues work on recently is that they developed a particular system, and these particular systems helped people that are having conflicting visions or ideas about a topic, um, like it helped those people to find common grounds. So technology made people aware of similarities in opinions that these people hold, that, but they were not aware of that. It was one very successful prototype and example in which you can actually become better teams, more effective teams, going back to the topic of institutions, organization, by actually using technology in the right way, such that some of the downsides of maybe human biases, etc., can be overcome. And the truth is that most companies are not motivated or don't have the necessary incentive structure to develop these kinds of technologies. But we have a lot of very good examples in which the technologies can really help people to overcome some of the challenges, downsides in the organizations. And maybe one proposal or suggestion is that everyone in an organization should think, how come this technology, if at all, and it's not that I'm not a techno solutions, I'm not saying that technology should be used, but if the technology is going to be adopted, what parts of the institution can become better by these technologies? And I don't think again there's one universal answer, but actually the technology maybe is inviting all of us to kind of reconsider all of these challenges and questions, come out of our comfortable habits that we all embodied, and basically suggest, okay, like we have to now figure out what problems we can resolve and what problems we should really keep as human kind of like issues and problems, and not really disrupting those with the technology. And I think that mindset, I think it's a mindset. We all need to adopt a particular mindset in relation to change, in relation to the impact of technology to ourselves, and in relation to our relation to technology. And when the mindset is adopted, I think the organizations would feel very empowered and confident in
Mhm.
going through this transformative experience.
That's actually a very good. I mean, I have to say that Atusa, sometimes you're just like cutting a bit, but I think that from like what I understood is that like I love this idea that there should be a mindset shift, like before any integration or development of new technologies, because like I'm going to give you an example, for example, from what we see actually in the workplace. Like when it comes to concepts of psychological safety, like we see that people of minority, people of like ethnic backgrounds, like in general, like women, like they feel less safe taking risks, talking about like their challenges, like they're as if like they're like different performance standards or expectations from like people, like, different people within the system. If I think about, obviously, as you said, like maybe developing a technology where it's going to help people, like team dynamics and culture, might not be the reality of many organizations. However, they will more or less integrate a technology. How can we make sure that the technology is being integrated and used in an ethical and equal way for different, like, team members, for different, like, employees and talents? Like,
Yeah.
an example that comes to mind is that if I don't feel safe sharing a mistake that I made or sharing my thoughts as one human being, what should change that I feel comfortable sharing or analyzing, or, like going through like the judgments that I have from an AI generated work?
No, this is great. So I think maybe there are two different ways in which AI systems can be used to empower um, all different types of workers, employees, organizations. One, I would say, more like a top down approach.
Yes.
So let's say most of the organizations, not all, but most of the organizations are based on a particular hierarchical structure. Typically, the people who are hiring the hierarchy have more power and have more responsibility. So they can think about how some of the problems that people are struggling with in the group, some of the psychological safety problems, work safety problems, etc., whether and how those issues can be resolved by AI systems. So one example coming from my own experience is, look, I know, as you correctly say, there are lots of non-English speaking, non-native English speakers that take specific classes and they need to compete in, let's say, American university with native English speakers. Like, obviously, there are two different levels of competence. Now, sometimes the ones that don't have a very good English capabilities, one reason, obvious natural reason for it, is that we just have not practiced. Myself as a non-native English speaker, like reading another language, right? So there's a lack of practice. What can we do? Maybe those people can just say, okay, like, one of my weaknesses is that I am not too good in probably speaking English in this particular context. I can practice it with my favorite safe language technology. And so therefore I can just like improve or empower myself along some dimensions that I think I am weak, right? So that's one way. And so maybe then those people can connect to the higher people in the organization and discuss how they think the technology can help them.
Yes.
The other approach is more of a bottom-up approach. So this requires different types of employees who are not necessarily top on the hierarchy, but they have a very special understanding of the organization, workplace, etc. They can think about how technology can improve some things, or actually how technology is disempowering some of them in the workplace, and share their perspectives with the people in the hierarchy. Again, as I said, maybe want to remain one sentence out of everything that I said is that there should be a mindset change. No one knows exactly how they have to deal with this technology and reach a new equilibrium. I think we are all at this stage, like moving from one equilibrium to another,
Yes.
and this movement process should be very participatory. So people just should know that, okay, no one knows the answer, but we're going to figure that out. And throughout history, many times when there were any types of historical political disruptions, no one had an answer. People came together, thought about it together, and just moved to a different point. And this is just a social fact about the world, across universally available and applicable across all cultures, nations, etc. So I think when we accept that, we would feel comfortable that this technology is not going to replace me in general. I think there would be some layoffs in some organizations. I have personally adopted the mindset of lots of things could be uncertain, so we shouldn't be super afraid of change. Like, some structures are going to change. If I lose my job, yeah, I can do other things. I can empower myself. As you said, AI literacy is very important. I can work on my soft skills, hard skills that I am very excited about, and we move forward. And I think that mindset should really be an empowering mindset, a mindset ready for change is going to happen. I got it, that kind of mindset.
Yes. But, you know, like, but then there is a challenge because you're like saying something, Atusa, that I think this is our 12th conversation. And every single person that I talked to so far, regardless of their background or expertise, mentioned that. And that is the idea of experimentation. That is the idea of allowing yourselves to test things out. But then there is a big challenge when we work with teams and leaders, it's all around performance, delivering projects, like how leaders can, and you still have to do that. They still have to go through this transformation as they are performing. Like, what would be that mindset or the insights that leaders listening now could use to say, okay, I need to work on this mode with this mode that it's a performance mode, but also experimentation mode. Like, what would
Yeah.
be some of the insights that you can share with them to help them out a bit?
Yeah, that's great. No, this is a great question. I think successful organization always think about different horizons, like horizons. Sometimes they have this longer decision-making horizons where they need to make some strategies for like long-term, like strategic horizons. Could be like, how would my organization look like in 5 years from now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so they make decisions such that the organization most probably is going in a positive direction, adaptable and aligned with what the higher people in the organization want. And then there's another level of decisions that are much more immediate, right? And so there are decisions about, okay, like, how should I change the way I think about the performance of my employees in the
Mm-hmm.
next 6 months, 1 year? And I think the successful organizations always try to make sure that this more like strategic time horizon decisions and more immediate time horizon decisions are kind of aligned to one another. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people are afraid that an organization is going to do a lot of mass layoff. Okay, at the moment, maybe like in 6 months, the CEO of the organization would be happy for saving some money in the organization. But in the long run, when all the dust are set, and then we all have figured out how this AI is going to connect to us in the new world, then obviously the organization needs to have happy and successful and satisfied employees. Otherwise, in the strategic time horizon, line, the organization is going to get destroyed. So I think accepting that there are just different levels of decision making, different performance metrics that very much relate to different time horizons, would really allow the leaders in the organizations, project managers, etc., to kind of like find a balance between immediate performance success rates, immediate performance metrics, and long-term performance metrics. And so as a result, I think just trying to find a successful balance between these two levels would help us to think about the notion of performance from a more multidimensional, interesting perspective that is not reductive to whether my employee is productive and successful here and now, and that's the only thing I care about.
Yes. I actually love this approach that you shared around reevaluating like performance. But at the same time, I would like to add that we also need to, like, leaders also need to give that space for like different areas of learning, of testing new things. Because like I see a lot way before AI, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, there were companies that we work with that innovation was part of their values, but they never necessarily dedicated time for people to innovate. So the idea is that, like, I think if I can recap everything that you said, Atusa, can we say that from leaders' perspective, they need a new mindset that is really tuned to change, that is okay with change, that understand, that feel confident that we are all going through this process together and there is so much uncertainty. However, they need to have that intentionality and that willingness to do things differently. And
Mm-hmm.
to your point, they need to have like decision making opportunities that are short term for performance, but also what's coming and what's next. And
That's true.
one thing that I really stayed with me from our conversation is that they look at technology not just as something that they need to embrace, because now when we talk about like technology and AI, I think that it's automatically within teams it said this is what we need to integrate, this is what we need to integrate for our clients, for our like the work that we're doing, for our product, for our service. However, like what stayed with me is that what would be that technology that can improve the way we work together, that could improve our team dynamics, that can improve my leadership skills, that it can improve. So, really looking at the AI as that tool that could be very helpful in this transformation time or this transition time. Like, what would be the last words that you want to leave our leaders with? And I have to say that something else that I loved also from our conversation is that also for like employees and talents who are not leaders, thinking about upskilling, reskilling, like developing their like soft skills, like hard, like just constantly thinking about upgrading themselves. It's a
Yeah.
great way of like somehow facing this uncertainty instead of like avoiding it, or instead of like really just pushing it.
Yeah. Oh, this is a great summary. I think I want to add two things I kind of refer to, but just to crystallize those ideas. So one is that no leader alone would figure out exactly what are going to be the impacts of this technology on the employees in the workforce. And
Mhm.
as a result, leaders need to understand or think about creative ways of embracing technology wherever relevant, wherever meaningful, in collaborations, in conversations, in discussion with the people who are really impacted. So I think about myself as a leader in a classroom. When I'm
Yeah.
leading a classroom, I kind of like guide the students through the whole process, learn about some topic. But throughout the couple past years, I learned that when I ask from my students when they think general purpose AI systems are helping them to get better, where they think these systems are disrupting their learning technology, I can get that feedback, which I don't know because I'm not a student. I'm a leader, I'm not a student, right? And so I can get that feedback and think much more in a richer way, in a much more interesting, creative way about ways in which I can incorporate the systems and technology. You can discuss about the technology with other people. And again, I don't want to look or sound as a very shallow, optimist about technology. But I actually think this technology can help us to think again in very creative ways about how we can improve the quality of our workplaces, how leaders can improve the quality of workplaces, such that overall for everyone else, the conditions of life have become better. And I say this as a historian of technology who has looked at the ways in which in the previous centuries, previous decades, people really try to figure out how a technology can improve human condition. And I think that's the only reason we are developing good technologies. So that's one thing. And I think the second thing that I want to emphasize is that yeah, like the whole idea of literacy, AI literacy, is very important. But also, people need to figure out what type of AI literacy is relevant to their employees. And again, we have so many sources of free education available on the World Wide Web for everyone. So just not really getting worried of, oh my God, AI is coming and no one knows. No, everyone knows about technology. Everyone has an experience of it, and everyone can learn it. And just like let's go through this process very gradually, accepting a very constructive, optimistic mindset. And I'm quite sure the end result, I don't know what's going to be, but it's going to be hopefully a better point as compared to where we are now.
And it's very interesting. Thank you so much, first of all, Atoosa, for like these two like final notes that you had. First is around constant exchange and feedback between leaders and teams, users, and like however we want to call it. This idea that we don't move forward with assumptions. we move
Mhm.
forward with more like facts. We just say, you know what, this is what's happening and this is how we can change it. And also the optimism that you talk, I have to say that I've talked to also to other, like, I would say technologists, like the who've done their PhDs in, like, technology, and all of them are extremely hopeful about like the use of technology and how it will improve our world. And we have people that say that, it really depends on us. Like, there's something we call it FOBO, like the fear of becoming obsolete. So I want to ask you this final question. As we're looking in 2035, do you think that, I would say that especially the world of work, because this is who we serve, the leaders and the people who are working as professionals. Do you think that we're going to be we're going to have the opportunity finally to be more humans, to do the things that we value in the workplace? Or do you think that we'll continue as is, working like machines, or even becoming obsolete? Like, there is this two, like, very different worlds that is being shared now these days, which one is really like, this is our time finally, this is our utopia, and the other one is that everyone's like, AI is going to kill us. So
Yeah.
where do you see yourself in between as a historian of technology?
This is a great question. I want to say first something about the idea of fear of becoming obsolete or FOBO that you mentioned. I think this is really a valid fear that humans have had, even the developers of technologies, even the founding fathers of artificial intelligence in 1950s, right? So it is not something that we should escape from it. And I have days and nights that I think about, okay, if everything is automated, very low chance, but let's say everything automated, what would be the meaning of life, right? Like a
Mhm.
lot of us get our meaning through job, through connection, workplace, to employees. What is going to be? And there are various different ideas and theories around this. Again, we don't know exactly what that would be. And there are a lot of thinkers, philosophers, economists, engineers who are thinking about if that.
Yeah. And I love this. And I have to say that it's a hard one because, we just see it. And I totally agree with you, Atusa, that it's really a mindset challenge, because I see lots of people, even now, like somehow nostalgic about the old ways of doing things, which had lots of potholes, which has lots of challenges. Like, we're talking about, oh, we all have to go to the office. Like, yeah, but women were sidelined. Like, people, like, women could not advance their careers. Like, there were always the question of pollution, like cars. And we just somehow romanticize like this old way of doing things. So what I'm really leaving this conversation with you is that what I'm leaving with is that we really need to adopt this new mindset, this new paradigm that change will happen, accepted, think of new ways of doing things, and really using these technologies to like move forward. Awesome. I love this, Atoosa. First of all, I love this, like talking about, like talking with you after all these years. I think that it was like 12 or 13 years that we haven't met and we haven't talked. Yes. So, and I want to just congratulate you for all the amazing work that you're doing. And thank you so much for accepting. I know that you're a very busy person, for accepting to be on this conversation, to just like, bring a different perspective. I guess this is where we're at, just figuring things out together. And this is what I hope through this human mode conversations I can do for our community. So thanks a lot for joining, and have a very good day. Thanks a lot. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.